Hello everyone, I'm Kaz Kalia and welcome to the Week 2 edition of the Sounding Off FanDuel Plays. If you caught my Week 1 video, you were probably pretty happy after last Sunday's games as we did pretty well with my recommendations. So there should have been some profit there for sure. If you missed my Week 1 video, don't worry, I have you covered here for Week 2 and hopefully we can begin your winning streak this week. Before I dive into my Week 2 FanDuel plays, I'd like to break down a little DFS strategy here with bankroll management specifically for the topic. Sometimes when you're first starting out in DFS and you do really well in that first week, you have this urge to want to play more or put more into play the following week, and I'm here to kind of warn you against doing that. It's a long season. There's 17 weeks in the NFL season, and plus a couple playoff weeks if you want to play playoff NFL DFS. A good success rate for DFS players is between 60 and 65%. If you do that, if you're winning that many weeks or that much of your contests, you're doing pretty good. So that means there's going to be a few weeks where maybe we make all the right calls, but maybe somebody gets hurt, or maybe a particular defensive coordinator decides to completely game plan against a player and completely just take him out of the equation in an otherwise a pretty good situation or matchup. And that's just something that's not predictable, and it can cause us to kind of have a little hiccup. So to prevent yourself from having a letdown and losing what you won the previous week, it's always a good strategy to kind of stay even keel throughout the season and put the same amount of play in each week. Now, if you do want to increase your the amount that you put in play, my recommendation is you set yourself a goal. Say I want to win 3 or 4 weeks in a row, and once you hit that, that's when you decide to up the amount that you play. Just so that's just a little thing to think about with your bankroll management there. So strategy aside, let's go ahead and dive into my favorite Week 2 plays. All right, so in Week 2 we have 13 games on this slate, and I probably should have mentioned this last week in my first video. The main slate on FanDuel is what I'm focusing on in my video. Only has the Sunday games. It does not include the Sunday night games. It does not include the Monday night games. It's just FanDuel's way of just setting up their main slate. I think their goal is that hopefully you play the main slate, you win, and then you want to put your more money into the other contest on Sunday night, Monday night, etc. So let's go ahead and dive into our quarterbacks here. It's no surprise that our guy Drew Brees, who's our quarterback for Week 1 cash game lineup, is at the top here. He had a really good week against the Buccaneers last week, and this week he's primed to have another big week at home against the Browns, who are nothing special on defense at all. And as I mentioned last week, Drew Brees always likes playing at home opposed to being on the road. He just has played significantly better at home in the Superdome over the course of his career. So he's definitely an option, my top option, if you're setting up at the position this week. If we drop down here, guys like Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady, you're not benching them in season long, but in DFS, I'm not playing him this week. Aaron Rodgers is dealing with a knee injury. It's possible he might even play. So if he doesn't play, Deshaun Kaiser's the Minnesota defense is instantly a great defense option against Deshaun Kaiser. Tom Brady has a difficult matchup at Jacksonville. While he is one of the greatest to ever play the game, I just given the choice of anybody on the slate, I'm going to pass on him this week at $8,500. The first guy I want to talk about that I like is Ben Roethlisberger at $7,600. He does have an injury. Notice here with his elbow he's dealing with. He said himself that it's not a big concern, but he hasn't practiced yet this week. So hopefully he gets a limited practice in on Friday or practice on Saturday, just to kind of give us a better feel for his situation there. If he does suit up, he has a great matchup against Kansas City at home. He's similar to Drew Brees in the sense that he is a lot better at home than has been on the road over the course of his career. He did struggle a little bit last week in Cleveland, but I think that had more to do with the weather than anything. There were 20-mile-an-hour winds plus, or with 30-mile-an-hour gusts at times, and there was a little wet, so I think that played into the equation a little bit with the struggles there. If we drop down, another guy in the mid-range I like for cash games is Kirk Cousins. He did really well in his debut for the Vikings. This week he has another solid matchup against Green Bay, who's not particularly good on defense. So he's definitely a good option here in the mid-range. A guy I like for tournaments a lot, the large field tournaments, if you're going up against thousands of people. Like I said in my Week 1 video, it's good to differentiate your lineup. And I think Watson's going to come under or be low owned this week. A lot of people were hyping up last week, and in season-long drafts, his hype was through the roof. He kind of laid an egg a little bit against New England, which I don't think was completely a shocker. Bill Belichick has always been pretty solid game planning against young quarterbacks, so I think that led to the big struggles in week one. This week he has an outstanding matchup against Tennessee. Ryan Tannehill just did really well against them last week, so I think Deshaun Watson can bounce back in a big way. And I think if you stack him with, say, DeAndre Hopkins in your tournaments, I think that's a good, a good approach for low ownership there. The guy I really want to focus on for cash games this week is Tyrod Taylor at $6,600. He didn't do anything spectacular against the Steelers last week, but he's a good cash game option because of his legs. It gives him a pretty solid floor. Um, this week he travels to New Orleans. New Orleans just got destroyed by Ryan Fitzpatrick of all people. I think eventually the Saints secondary gets it in order and they end up being pretty solid like they were in 2017. But I just think that it's not this week that they're gonna get everything in order there. I think it's gonna be take a little time there. So I think Tyrod Taylor is a safe play. He doesn't have to do a lot to give us a good return on the salary at $6,600. I mean, if he gets 100, if throws for 150, throws one or two touchdowns, rushes for 50 yards, that's a good floor. And I think that is his floor for this week with potential for a lot more upside. If we slide over to running backs here, what I really want to drive home this week is spend up on at least two of these guys. My favorite are Kamara, Gurley, and Gordon. Bell's still not reported yet. David Johnson's okay. He's dealing with a little back injury here. That might limit his touches a little bit. So I want to focus on the other three here. Kamara and Gurley both had good week ones. Kamara had 38.6 FanDuel points with Ingram out another 3 weeks. It's going to be his show out of the backfield. And last week didn't even set up great for him game script wise. I mean, the Saints were down big early, so usually teams go away from the run. But since Kamara is a good pass catching running back, he got a lot of receptions out of the backfield. So he's a safe play week in and week out with huge upside. Todd Gurley the same way. He was on my roster in my lineups a lot in 2017. I think it's going to be another common theme here in 2018 as well. He did really well against the Raiders in week one. He saw 23 touches, which was his average in 2017. So he's another safe play up there at the top here. If we slide down a little bit, our guy James Conner, who was our value pick in week one, that really did well in Le'Veon Bell's absence. I think this similar, or I don't know if he's going to get 31 FanDuel points again, but I think at $7,000 he's still a pretty safe play. He's not a lock, I'd say, at this salary at 7,000 like he was when he was 5,000 last week, because there are a couple other value plays I do like, but I think it's his gig there in Pittsburgh with Bell out, and he saw 31 touches in week one, and he did really well. So I think he's earned himself the lion's share once again this week. I'm gonna plug him in here for now. If you want to kind of go a different route for tournaments, cash games, James Conner's my guy, but for tournaments, a guy I like this week a lot is Dalvin Cook. Now Cook, he missed most of last season with an ACL injury. Before his ACL injury, he was a bell cow running back from Minnesota, and he did really well with his touches. In week one, he saw 80% of the touches, which I think it kind of surprised some people. I think some people thought the Vikings were going to ease him back into things after that ACL injury, and maybe Murray would split with him on the snaps, but that wasn't the case. I mean, Dalvin Cook dominated the snaps. I can only see them increasing it going forward, and he has a good matchup against Green Bay, and he really didn't do terrible. I mean, he didn't score a touchdown, but he got a decent amount of yards. He had a few receptions out of the backfield, and then his salary dropped $800. So I think he's a great pivot from James Conner in tournaments, because I think James Conner is going to be popular. And so if Dalvin Cook can outscore James Conner in your tournament lineup, he's going to really set you ahead of the pack there. All right, so if we slide over to wide receivers here, at the top, I think Antonio Brown is my favorite play. He's pricey at $8,900, but he's been one of the safest wide receivers to roster over the last 5 or 6 seasons. There was a stretch there couple years ago where he had, I don't know I can't remember what the streak was, but it was 5 receptions and 100 yards guaranteed every week. Um, Even the poor weather last week in Cleveland, he still did really well with nine receptions, 93 yards, and a touchdown, and had a team high 16 targets. This week he has a great matchup. According to Pro Football Focus, Brown will be matched up mostly against Steven Nelson of the Chiefs, who is currently ranked the 41st cornerback out of 99 that are ranked by Football Focus. So that's definitely a good matchup for him. If you want to go a different route, I don't think you can go wrong with any of these guys at the top. Michael Thomas, Julio Jones, DeAndre Hopkins. He has a little foot thing, but I think that's more of a precautionary thing more than a concern. All three of these guys are in play. They all, similar to Brown, they all have really good individual matchups against the cornerback that they're likely to see this week. Tyreek Hill had a big week. I'm not too high on. I don't think he'll replicate that 3 touchdown week, and his salary came up quite a bit, so I'm off him. Keenan Allen's another guy too that has a good matchup this week, and I'm definitely liking him. If you want to go that route, if you want to save a little bit and go down from these top guys, he's another good option. Thielen's another good guy. I think there was a little concern from the preseason that Thielen may not be that Diggs might be Cousins' favorite guy receiver, but Thielen had more targets than Diggs in Week 1. And he produced pretty well. I think he's primed for a good game here against Green Bay, so he's a good mid-range guy. If you don't want to go spend up, maybe you want two mid-range guys. That's possible. My tournament pivot from Antonio Brown, if you use him and stack, say, Ben Roethlisberger, I think you should go Juju. He's going to have a lot lower ownership than Antonio Brown, and he has just as much upside, just probably not as much consistency. So in tournaments, I think I like Juju more than Brown if you're going that route. If we slide down here, get the value range here. Oh, another guy I like too, Jarvis Landry. If you're playing a guy with Tyrod Taylor stacking, my pick is Jarvis Landry over Gordon. So Gordon is expected to be shadowed by Marcus Lattimore of the Saints. Marcus Lattimore was a top 5 cornerback by Pro Football Focus in 2017. He's one of the best in the game right now, and only his second year in the NFL. That leaves Landry with a great slot matchup against the Saints. So if you are stacking with Tyrod Taylor, Landry is my guy. So if we're spending up 2 spots at running back and we're getting Antonio Brown, we're going to have to go bargain bin shopping here. First guy I like this week is Nelson Aguilar at $6,100 at Tampa. Aguilar did not have a great game last Thursday night against the Falcons, but he did see a team-high 10 targets with Alshon Jeffrey still nursing an injury. I think we continue to expect Aguilar to lead the way in targets for the Eagles until Jeffrey gets back. This week has an outstanding matchup against the Bucs. Aguilar lined up in the slot 84% of the time last week in Week 1. And the slot cornerback for Tampa is MJ Stewart, who is currently ranked 75th out of 99 by Pro Football Focus. So that's definitely a good matchup that we want to take advantage of there. If we slide down even further for my third wide receiver, I like Quincy Enunwa. Excuse me. Enunwa had a great Week 1 on Monday night against the Lions. Jermaine, his teammate right below him, Jermaine Kearse was out and he's expected to be back, but I think Enunwa proved that I think he's the better receiver than Kearse. Kearse is nothing special. Enunwa had a solid season in 2016. He got hurt last year and missed almost all of the 2017 season. But Darnold targeted him 10 times. Darnold went through the ball 21 times, so nearly 50% of the targets were going to Enunwa. I don't expect him to garner 50% of the targets every single week, but I think it's a great sign that he did see 10 targets in Week 1. And he had a pretty good connection with Darnold, so I think that's going to continue going forward. That's pretty much it at the wide receiver position. So let's go ahead and slide over to tight end. Gronk had a good Week 1. I mentioned last week, though, I don't like particularly spending up at tight end. I think it really restricts the rest of your lineup construction. Gronk's he's more than likely going to get a touchdown almost every week or close to it. But his salary is prohibitive at other positions, so I don't like spending up to him, even though he is clearly the best tight end in the league. If we slide down here, I don't really like spending up at all this week. I don't like Kelsey that much. Ertz is okay. Reed is okay. I'm concerned about Graham. I actually had concerns preseason with Graham. I just don't buy the hype on him. It seems like teams really struggle with their offensive line whenever Graham is out running passes, except when he was with Drew Brees there down in New Orleans when they had a really solid offensive line. Rudolph's not a bad option, but the first guy I want to focus on is George Kittle. He did really well in Week 1 with against the stingy Vikings defense. He had 5 receptions and 90 yards and 9 targets. Right now, Marquise Goodwin is not looking good to go for this week, and if he sits out, George Kittle is a great play at $5,600. It's going to be him and pretty much Garcon as the main targets for Garoppolo. And the Lions really struggle against opposing tight ends, so he's definitely a good matchup there, or a good spot there. If we slide down a little bit more, I like Jared Cook again this week. He had 180 yards in Week 1, which was basically 1/3 of his total receiving yards from 2017. I don't expect him to. I expect that to regress eventually here, but I don't know if it's going to be this week. I think he has another solid week against Denver. Denver has a pretty solid secondary, so I think they're going to be pretty tight on Amari Cooper and also Jordan Nelson. So that should leave quite a bit of room over the middle for Jared Cook to do some damage. And if there is one weakness on this decent Denver defense, it is across the middle of the field. All right, if we dive down to the bargain bin, there's 2 guys I really, really like down here at the bottom that are benefiting from injuries to teammates. The first guy is going to be, where is he at? Johnny Smith. So Delaney Walker's been placed on IR. He's expected to miss the rest of the season here. So it's Johnny Smith's time to shine. He in limited action last year with Walker on the team, he did all right. He didn't do anything spectacular, but he did all right with the little work that he did get. He's in the second year of the NFL after being taken by the Titans in the 3rd round, and it's really funny. His pro comp is Delaney Walker. So with that being said, I think he steps right in this situation and garners close to what Walker's production was right out of the gate. So he's definitely a good option here against Houston at only $4,200. The guy I'm going to plug into my cash game lineup though is down here at almost bare minimum here. Oh, where'd he go? I'm not sure where he is, but I'm actually on there. Okay, so Ian Thomas here. Ian Thomas is another young, athletic tight end. He's a rookie, so there's a little pause of concern there, but he's benefiting from Greg Olson's injury to his foot, same one that he hurt last year. It was originally announced that Olson was going to be put on IR, but then they said they're going to hold off on that, and maybe he misses only a couple of weeks. I don't know if I'd buy that. I mean, with Olson's age and his injury history, I think he's going to be out for a while. I think it's Ian Thomas's time to shine right out of the gate here in his rookie season. He turned some heads in the preseason too, and there was some speculation that maybe he would take away from Olson's production anyways during the regular season. So at $4,000, I don't think he's a bad play. I mean, as long as he doesn't give us a goose egg this week, I think he's a safe play. Last week I recommended Austin Severian-Jenkins. He didn't do much. He only got 4 points for us, but since he was cheap, he allowed us to spend up other places, and that's the same thing that Thomas is doing. If he does, 4 or 5 points as his floor, I can live with that. If he does more, that's a bonus. And as long as our top salary guys pick up that slack, we're not going to miss anything out unless he absolutely does nothing for us. And also, Atlanta's defense is missing a couple of key guys. Deion Jones, their young middle linebacker, who's been really solid the last couple of years. He's been placed on IR. They also had a safety. One of their starting safeties placed on IR. So I think there's a lot of room over the middle here for Ian Thomas to do quite a bit of damage. Let's just hope that Cam Newton can just give him the ball here. So that pretty much does it at the tight end position. Now we're going to head over to the last spot, which is defense. Now, we have the Rams at the top here. If you can afford them, we obviously can't hear in this lineup that I have constructed right now, but if you can afford them, they're the play. Arizona currently has the lowest projected team total at 16 points. As long as Sam Bradford's still starting, are still playing. I think they're in a lot of trouble. He looked awful last week in week one. He couldn't get anything going, and he couldn't even create any production for Larry Fitzgerald, which is pretty concerning considering that Fitzgerald has done really well with really subpar quarterbacks in the past. So if you can fit them in, they're definitely a good play. Like I said, if for some reason Rodgers is out for week two, the Vikings are immediately in play. I'd probably put them over who I'm gonna go with, assuming that Rodgers does play. Assuming Rodgers play, I'm gonna go with the Chargers here. The only thing that's preventing the Chargers from being the top overall defense, regardless of salary, is that Joey Bosa is going to miss this game. But even without him, I don't see any concern here at all at Buffalo. Allen's going to be starting this week over Peterman. Allen looked a little bit better than Peterman once he came in relief. But I still think that this is a very struggling offense. It might be the worst offense in the entire NFL. So I do like the Chargers a lot this week at this salary. Um, if you're going cheaper and want to spend up somewhere else, my favorite cheap defense this week is going to be the Redskins. If you're trying to punt the position here, um, Andrew Luck looked pretty good in his return to the NFL after missing all of last year. But their offensive line is still a little shaky, so I think the Redskins can create some pressure and maybe they give up a few points, but I think they're going to give some sacks and maybe get one interception, maybe a fumble here and there. So at almost the bare minimum, they're my favorite cheap option this week. If you want to do something crazy for tournaments, I think this could be a crazy play or a sneaky play. Let's say that the Saints do get together here like they did in 2017. I think Tyrod Taylor is going to be really popular in tournaments. So the way to kind of go against the popularity of Tyrod Taylor is to play the Saints defense and hope that they do get some turnovers, maybe a pick six or something, and keep them in check. So if you want to hedge your Tyrod Taylor play cash games, maybe consider playing the Saints in one of your tournament lineups. That's not the craziest thing to do this week. So that's pretty much it for week two for me. Hopefully we can continue our success like we did in week one. Like I said last week, feel free to hit me up on Twitter at Kaz_Kalita if you have any questions on my lineup or any other even season-long questions, anything. Just feel free to hit me up on there. All right, good luck in week two, everyone.